The snow was falling like shards of glass, each flake slicing at her cheeks, biting at her lungs, and yet she ran, faster than she thought possible, her dress torn and clinging to her skin, dark streaks of blood staining the white fabric. One hand pressed against her swollen belly, heart hammering, not just for herself, but for the life inside her, a fragile heartbeat she had promised to protect no matter the cost. Her legs trembled, muscles burning, but the wolves behind her did not hesitate, and neither could she. The wind whipped through the skeletal trees, carrying with it the scent of frost, of fear, and something older, darker. Her former pack, relentless, hunting. Eyes glinted through the haze of snow, sharp and merciless, teeth bared, growls vibrating through the frozen forest floor, and every snap of a branch beneath her foot echoed like a warning, like a countdown. And then there was the power. Silver sparks dancing along her wrists, trailing along the tips of her hair, flickering wildly, threatening to consume her, to erupt into something uncontrollable. She swallowed the scream that rose in her throat, forcing it down, forcing herself to move faster, to stay ahead of what they called her weakness, her curse. A sob caught in her throat as she whispered, barely audibly, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, little one," to the child in her belly. A trembling promise. A plea to the life she carried. She had no idea if she could survive this night. No idea if she could outrun what hunted her, not just the pack, but the betrayal that had torn her world apart. And yet, somewhere in that fear, a spark of defiance flared. She was more than the whispers, more than the judgment, more than the exile. She was something else now, something dangerous, something alive, something that could not be tamed. Branches clawed at her arms, snow blinded her vision, but she forced her eyes forward, forcing her legs to move, forcing her power to stay contained. The growls were closer now, the eyes brighter, the forest shaking under the weight of their pursuit. Her pulse thundered in her ears, each beat matching the tremor in the ground beneath her feet. And then, just for a fleeting heartbeat, she felt it. Her power, her own pulse of silver fire, coiling around her like a tether to something she had yet to understand, promising strength even when all else seemed lost. If you love emotional werewolf stories about rejected omegas, fate, and forbidden love, subscribe to Moonlight Mate's story because here, the fire always burns, even on the coldest night. She skidded to a halt, chest heaving, lungs burning, as a shadow detached itself from the moonlit trees. Massive, impossibly broad, and moving with an effortless authority that made the snow beneath him seem to bow, he blocked the path ahead. Dark fur shimmered under the silver glow of the moon, golden eyes cutting through the falling snow like twin suns. Her heart slammed against her ribs, every instinct screaming at her to turn, to run. But something in that gaze held her frozen. Then he spoke. Low, commanding, yet with a cadence that threaded warmth through the icy air. Her name rolled off his tongue, not as accusation, not as claim, but like a tether to a lifeline she hadn't realized she was clinging to. And in that instant, the pack behind her faltered, uncertainty rippling through them, growls strangled into silence. He smelled her fear, the pulse of her heart racing not just with panic, but with the life growing inside her. A subtle, unspoken recognition passed between them. He knew what she carried, and what it meant. With a surge of controlled power, he moved, and the wolves surrounding her scattered, backs arched, tails tucked, instincts quelled by an authority they could not challenge. Yet when he turned to her, every ounce of his power softened, restrained, careful, every movement measured to keep her safe. His hand reached out, not pressing, not demanding, but brushing against her arm. Silver sparks that had been flickering wildly along her wrists, and hair stabilized under his touch, coiling calmly like lightning obeying a master. Her pulse hammered in response, and something unnameable stirred in her chest. Fear intertwined with awe, panic tangled with curiosity, terror laced with a pull she could not resist. She wrestled with herself, with the instinct to flee, the ingrained habit of hiding. But part of her wanted to lean in, to trust, to surrender, even for just a heartbeat. Their eyes met, and in that long, searing moment, the world fell away. The forest, the wolves, the snow, all gone, leaving only the heat of his gaze, the silent promise of protection and attention so thick she could taste it. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. His presence spoke volumes. Power, danger, something both terrifying and irresistible. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't feel alone. The snow continued to fall, softening the forest's edges, yet inside her, the chill was sharper than any winter wind. As her breath came in ragged gasps, memories clawed their way to the surface, unbidden, relentless. She had been born Omega, marked from the first cry of her life as different, dangerous, unwanted. The pack had called her a curse wrapped in fragile flesh, whispered warnings about her bloodline, about powers too wild to be trusted. Even her mother had flinched at her first shimmer of silver light, a flicker that should have been ordinary for a newborn, but which had burned with promise and peril alike. Every step through the forest was haunted by their voices. She will destroy us. Keep her away. They had tried to teach her to hide, to silence the flicker within her, but the fire had refused. And now, carrying life within her, the power pulsed stronger than ever, an untamed current she barely controlled. Every heartbeat, every movement amplified the spark at her wrists, the glow along her hair, a reminder that she could be dangerous, that anyone who touched her, anyone who dared to care, could be burned. And yet, in the midst of fear, in the echoing emptiness of exile, a different sensation stirred when he had appeared. The Alpha, the one who saw her trembling form, the one whose presence had not recoiled from the truth of her power, who had not whispered or looked away. His gaze had held her in a way that demanded nothing, yet promised protection. It was disarming, infuriating, a silent challenge to every instinct she had honed to survive. Flee first, trust never. Guilt coiled inside her, tight and bitter, and the child she carried was a beacon of hope and a mark of shame all at once. Its father denied responsibility, and the pack's whispers had turned to venom. Yet, in his eyes, she glimpsed a possibility she had never dared imagine. Acceptance, maybe even understanding. She swallowed, forcing the tremor from her lips, and clenched her fists. She would not break, not yet. Not when the silver spark still sang in her veins, not when life pressed against her from within, demanding she rise, endure, and claim what was hers. And perhaps for the first time she wondered if redemption, not just survival, might be within reach. The forest thinned suddenly, parting like a veil to reveal a grove that seemed older than time itself. Stone monoliths jutted from the earth, etched with runes that pulsed faintly beneath the silver moonlight. Each symbol shimmered with a subtle, otherworldly glow, and the air hummed with a vibration that tickled her bones, setting her heart racing. She stepped cautiously, every instinct screaming both awe and fear, her hand pressed to the swell of life beneath her ribs. From the shadows at the edge of the grove, voices whispered. Soft, fractured, like wind through reeds. The womb of flame, the mother who changes bloodlines. Their tones were reverent, laced with dread, as though naming her aloud carried the weight of centuries. She froze, pulse hammering, and her silver sparks flared along her wrists and hair tips, startling in their intensity. This place, this moment, seemed to recognize her, calling her out for what she could be, or what she might destroy. Then the visions came, sudden and relentless. A child crowned in gold and fire, sees standing upon a hill as wolves knelt around in silent obedience. Silver and flame intertwined around the child, dancing like twin serpents of power and destiny. The wind carried the scent of ozone, blood, and wildfire. She stumbled back, clutching her belly as if shielding the unborn child from the enormity of the revelation. She wanted to curse the gift, to deny it, yet a spark of awe burned behind her fear. Could this tiny life be the key to something greater than survival? The Alpha's eyes found hers across the grove, steady and unwavering, and she felt an echo of understanding in his gaze. He did not speak, words were unnecessary, but the look told her that destiny had chosen more than her power alone. It had chosen her heart, her courage, her very soul. The weight of centuries pressed against her, and yet, for the first time, She felt the faint stirrings of possibility, a fragile thread of hope woven through the trembling fear in her chest. Her body trembled with a mix of anticipation and terror. The air thickened around her, alive with whispers of prophecy, of fire and silver, of a future that might consume her or crown her. And in that moment, she understood that what had once been a curse might yet become her greatest power, and that she was standing at the threshold of a destiny that would reshape the world. The sacred grove, once silent and reverent, erupted into chaos. Shadows shifted, broken by torches and the stamping of paws on frost-hardened earth. Rival alphas emerged from the tree line, their eyes sharp, voices like thunder. Forbidden pregnancy! Omega corruption! They spat, each word a dagger aimed straight at her heart. She stumbled, clutching her swollen belly, the cold biting through her torn dress, her silver sparks flaring violently in response to her rising panic. The alpha beside her growled low, a rumble that shook the frozen grove, but even his presence could not silence the pack. Their accusations cut deeper than any fang. The council stepped forward, robes rustling, eyes hard with judgment. "She threatens the bloodline. She is a curse," one voice hissed, dripping venom like poison. The alpha's gaze flickered between her and the pack, torn between loyalty, duty, and desire. His golden eyes narrowed, and she felt the weight of his internal battle pressing down, just as hers pressed from within. The life she carried, the power she barely controlled, the trust she almost gave. She could feel it, her power, raw and unstable, simmering just beneath her skin. Yet the forest floor trembled as her silver sparks erupted into tendrils of light, crackling over the snow and ice. Trees shivered under the strain, their bark splitting with the vibrations of her fury and fear. She did not mean to, but the force of it mirrored her heartbreak, her rage, the betrayal she had anticipated yet still could not accept. The pack's voices rose to a chorus of condemnation, demanding exile, demanding submission, demanding she leave or be destroyed. Her chest heaved, but she did not waver. Eyes flashing between defiance and sorrow, she stepped back, whispering a vow to herself and to the life growing within her. "No matter the cost, I will protect him. I will endure. I will rise." And with that, she vanished into the forest, leaving behind the shattered grove and the echoes of a bond tested, a pack betrayed, and a love that would not be extinguished. Even as the cold wind tore at her, even as her pulse screamed against the separation, a single ember of determination burned bright. An ember that would not die, no matter how hard the world fought back. The cave welcomed her like a secret only the wind had carried before. Shadows danced across the stone walls, flickering with the rhythm of the small fire the alpha had kindled. The warmth pressed against her skin, a stark contrast to the bitter cold she had fled through, yet it carried its own weight, a heavy, intimate closeness that made her pulse stutter. She settled on the edge of the uneven stone, knees drawn close, one hand brushing against her belly as if to shield the life she feared could be taken at any moment. He remained across from her, massive yet careful, the firelight catching in the depths of his golden eyes. He spoke softly, the words almost swallowed by the crackle of flames. "I've been alone. More than you could imagine," he said, each syllable raw with loneliness that matched the hollow ache inside her own chest. She lifted her gaze, searching his face, and for a moment, the forest, the pack, the betrayal, all of it, faded into nothing but the warmth between them. I didn't expect it to be this hard," she confessed, voice low, trembling. "Being pregnant, hunted. I feel like I'm carrying not just a life, but the weight of all my mistakes." The firelight flickered across her tear-streaked cheeks, and for a heartbeat, the vulnerability between them stretched so taut, it was almost unbearable. His hand rose, hesitant, hovering an inch from hers. The air trembled. It charged with something older, deeper, and unbearably intimate. "I see you," he whispered, voice steady but heavy. "All of you. Every fear, every scar, every spark of power you try to hide, I see it." Her breath caught. Silver sparks shimmered faintly at her fingertips, responding to his presence, to his words. The attraction, unspoken yet undeniable, hummed through the cave like a living thing. Their eyes met, long and loaded, and she felt the pull between fear and longing, the pull between retreat and surrender. She could flee at any second, she knew, but something inside her, a fragile, trembling hope, urged her to stay. A nearly kiss hovered between them, a promise unspoken, a temptation of trust and connection that neither dared to name fully. Yet even in that quiet, intimate space, the shadow of betrayal lingered, waiting just beyond the firelight, a reminder that nothing was simple, nothing was safe, and everything could change in an instant. The clearing had never felt colder. Even the firelight seemed to shiver as the council stepped forward, their eyes sharp, their voices cutting like knives through the tense night air. She carries the forbidden power," one of the elders hissed, trembling with both fear and authority. "Her womb will bring ruin. She will destroy us all." Her chest tightened. The words slashed through her like icy blades, deeper than any wound, echoing every whispered accusation she had endured since birth. Her hands pressed harder against her stomach, feeling the life inside, small and fragile, yet pulsing with the same fire that now surged uncontrollably in her veins. The Alpha stepped forward, golden eyes flashing. But even his presence could not shield her from the sharp, collective judgment. "No," he said, voice steady yet strained, a barrier against the rising tide of hatred. "She is not your enemy." But the council was relentless, their demands slicing the space between them. Exile her. Execute the child. Let her power be nothing but a warning. Her pulse thundered in her ears, and the air around her began to shimmer. Silver sparks leapt from her wrists, licking the snow-dusted ground, snaking through the frost-laden trees. The forest trembled. Branches snapped under invisible weight. The Alpha's gaze softened briefly, reaching for her, but she shook him off, not in defiance, not in distrust, but in fear of what she could no longer contain. And then it erupted. A torrent of silver fire tore from her, mingling with the cold snowflakes, or igniting the frozen earth. The ground quaked as her power, unbound and raw, swept through the clearing. Wolves howled in terror and awe, their cries swallowed by the roar of her unleashed force. Light flared, then darkness, then silver once more, and where she had stood, there was nothing but the faint glow of flame fading into the storm. Her mind burned with rage, heartbreak, and an undeniable truth. She was no victim, no pawn. She was a storm, a force that could no longer be denied. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, the Alpha's voice cut through the chaos, calling her name, tethering her to him, to hope, to what might survive this destruction. The night trembled before her arrival. From the shadows of the shattered clearing, silver fire unfurled like a living thing, wrapping her in its brilliance, illuminating every jagged tree, every frozen leaf, every trembling wolf. She stepped forward, chest heaving, eyes burning gold and silver at once, the raw power of the storm she had become radiating outward, demanding acknowledgement. The enemy, once smug in the ritual's control, froze. Their confidence faltered at the sight of her, no longer a trembling, hunted Omega, but a force of nature, alive with power that defied fear itself. Her hands glowed, fingers tipped with shards of silver flame, the air humming with energy so potent it bent the light and rattled the stones around the altar. Every step she took sent tremors into the earth, echoing the heartbeat of the child within her, a rhythm as fierce and unyielding as her will. She saw her mate, the Alpha, cornered, tension coiling in his posture, fear and admiration mingling in those golden eyes. She met his gaze, and for a heartbeat, the world paused. "I was never weak," she said, her voice cutting through the night like a silver blade. "I was becoming." Her words carried more than defiance. They carried destiny, vengeance, and love entwined. The enemy stirred, dark shapes moving with malicious intent, but each advance met a wall of silver flame and unrelenting will. Innocence huddled behind her, protected by her aura, as the ground itself seemed to rise to her command. Her pregnancy glowed like molten silver, a living signal of power that was feared, revered, unstoppable. Time stretched. The night became a crucible. The Alpha's voice called to her across the storm of fire and wind, anchoring her, reminding her of trust, of connection. And in that moment, she understood the truth. She was not a sacrifice. She was the reckoning, the storm, or the spark that would ignite everything. The enemy faltered, hesitation in their eyes, and the forest itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next heartbeat, the next surge, the next eruption of power that would decide everything. The forest fell silent, but it was not peace. It was the trembling hush after a storm had torn through everything. Smoke curled from the shattered altar, silver sparks fading slowly into the night, leaving the world dim, shadowed, and trembling. The Alpha's eyes were fixed on her, golden and raw, a storm restrained by the weight of hope and fear. He stepped closer, hesitant yet pleading, the tension in his body a mirror of the fire that had just raged between them. "Stay," he whispered, his voice breaking against the cold air, a fragile thread stretched across the chaos. It was not just a command. It was a question, a confession, a vulnerability he had never dared show. And in that single word, she felt the pull of something she had almost forgotten existed. Trust, love, the connection that had grown in quiet corners, in whispered conversations, in flickering firelight. Her gaze drifted to the horizon. Beyond the tree line, the moon hung low, pale and luminous, casting silver over frost-tipped branches. The wind carried distant howls, echoes of those who had opposed her, those who feared the power she now owned. Her heartbeat, steady and strong, echoed the rhythm of the child within her, the pulse of a future yet unwritten. Between the call of duty and the stirrings of the heart, she felt the weight of choice pressing down, heavy and inescapable. Questions rose unbidden, yet reverberating through the hollow of her chest. Would you have feared her or followed her? Could you stand beside the girl the world had tried to break, the Omega who had become a storm, a force, a reckoning? Would you risk everything for destiny or for love? And as she turned slowly, the wind carrying the smell of burned earth and silver flame, her voice joined the quiet night, a murmur of promise and defiance. If this story lit something inside you, the narrator's voice echoed, soft yet commanding, subscribe to Moonlight Mate's story. Because here, destiny always burns beneath the moon. The forest waited. The question lingered. And the night held its breath. She moved slowly, each step deliberate, as if the forest itself could sense the power that now radiated from her. The snow crunched under her boots, a brittle, hollow sound that echoed through the trees, but the ground beneath her trembled subtly, as though recognizing the force she carried within. Her breath fogged the air, silver plumes dancing with the faint flicker of residual sparks at her wrists. The wind whispered through skeletal branches, carrying with it the scent of distant wolves, the lingering trace of those who had tried to break her, and failed. Every shadow seemed alive. Every flicker of moonlight on icy bark painted the silhouette of eyes, distant, watching, waiting. She knew she was not truly alone. Somewhere beyond the darkness, something or someone acknowledged her rise. The whisper came then, low, almost a vibration in the marrow of her bones. She is not the only one. The words wrapped around her like a cold, tight cloak, unsettling yet compelling. A question stirred in her chest. Who else? Another Omega? Another power awakening? Or a rival she had yet to face? Her pulse quickened, a rhythmic drum of anticipation and dread, and she felt the stirrings of destiny, dangerous and intoxicating, pressing her forward. Moonlight broke through the canopy in scattered shards, illuminating silver eyes that glimmered from the shadows. Not one, not two, but many, watching silently, assessing, waiting. She didn't falter. She straightened her shoulders, the weight of her unborn child grounding her, the memory of her alpha anchoring her, the knowledge of her newfound strength propelling her. This forest, this night, this world, it would remember her, even if she was not yet ready to claim it fully. And as the wind carried the whispers further into the frozen woods, the narrator's voice cut softly through the darkness, almost a secret shared directly with the listener. The true alpha hasn't risen, yet, and the story has only begun. Her silhouette faded into the night, the forest trembling behind her, hearts and minds left suspended in haunting anticipation.